So we have to go back to the end of World War II, where much of the world was coming out of war, decimated, economies destroyed, countries looking to now prevent another world war from happening. So what they did was they created um, in 1945 they got together and they signed the UN Charter, essentially creating a framework for the creation of the United Nations and starting this process of of the world coming together and um, not just preventing war, but the world collaborating, working together to improve the human rights condition of the world. And exactly what I mean by that, there was actually in the preamble of the UN Charter, it talks about, it says, that they reaffirmed, quote unquote, reaffirmed faith in fundamental human rights and dignity and worth of the human person. Article 55 of that same charter says there would be, quote, universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, and religion. So basically, you had the start of a human rights process on a global level. Prior to in the olden days, prior to the modern era, you had, if people wanted to go to war with another country, the justification would be, good, evil, religion, so many different things you can talk about. But what this did is this creating a framework for global governance that's based on principles of human rights. And so it was, they mentioned that in the UN Charter, they mentioned the need of the member states to respect human rights. And so from 1945 on, this process had started. And so just a year later, there was the UN Commission on Human Rights. And in fact, that commission was actually, it got its start from, it was created by the UN Economic and Social Council. So just to show you right then and there that human rights was actually something that was started with an economic and social dimension. And it was from there that then you had this commission which drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights it has about, actually it has 30 articles in it, and most of them are economic and social rights. They're tied to economic, social, cultural stuff. This was a document that was accepted by most of the world. It was translated into 500 plus languages, more countries than languages, more languages than countries in the world. So obviously in the indigenous languages of varying communities. And so so then that was 1948. And so in 1966, what they did was they had these two important treaties. There was they called them the international covenants. So there was one international covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights, and the second one was on civil and political rights, what Yolian just mentioned. So the thing is that the United States, the country that we are in today, they signed, but they didn't ratify the Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights Covenant. And what that means basically is that the United States, in actual practice and through legally binding sort of ways, refuses to commit to economic human rights in the world. And so what it does is basically exclusively focus on civil and political rights, the other treaty. And so it's in fact the only industrialized country in the world that does not recognize those rights. And so it has not ratified that treaty. So what they do is they focus exclusively on civil and political rights, and we see this manifesting in so many ways around the world. So just so you know how important it is that all of the rights should be respected, the leading body of the world for human rights, OHCHR, the Office of the Commissioner, the High Commissioner for Human Rights. It is the leading body that goes back to the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so it was created in 1993, but it is part of this process. It is now the leading entity for human rights in the world. And so what they say in their documents, actually for the Human Rights Council, in the document that establishes the Human Rights Council, what they say, quote, all human rights are universal, indivisible, interrelated, interdependent, and mutually reinforcing, and that all human rights must be treated in a fair and equal manner on the same footing and with the same emphasis. But they also say, OHCHR that is, that no social phenomenon is as comprehensive in its assault on human rights as poverty. So clearly, the economic dimension actually is a very crucial factor for all of the human rights to be fully expressed and felt and enjoyed by all peoples. And so the fact that the United States refuses to sign the treaty on economic, social, and cultural rights makes it so that it has a skewed version of human rights and pursues human rights in a very specific and, in fact, I'm going to say prosecutorial way. So just to give you an example, when was the last time you heard about a country that the United States or in the Western world targeted for, let's say, they invoke humanitarian intervention in a country because they didn't have enough health care, or they didn't have enough education. Education wasn't free. They don't do that. When do they invoke humanitarian intervention? What did they do to Libya? It's always civil and political rights, that there are these authoritarian regimes, that there are not enough elections aren't done, the people aren't able to assemble. And not to say that these things aren't important, but they're mutually reinforcing, as they say, that they're interdependent and that they must be equally respected. And so the fact that the US and the West has this singular focus on civil and political rights, what it does is it leads to a very, again, a skewed version of human rights in the world. And so when we come to places like, this recent conflict that's currently, there was the peace deal in Ethiopia with the Tigray conflict, we saw that they want to issue through what they call special procedures through the Human Rights Council, to issue these special rapporteurs or these commissions of inquiries to investigate these different issues of human rights in different conflicts. And so they want to do that in Ethiopia, but what they're doing is they're focusing exclusively on civil and political rights. They're not focusing on the economics of it and what caused this, and we can talk about imperialism. Basically, my point is that human rights should be respected, all of them equally, and by just focusing on the civil and political, what we're doing is we're creating a very skewed version of human rights in the world.